particular type of energy involved, and its initiatory effect. Here we are confronted with a basic problem, i.e., the nature of the principle of conflict, which is the outstanding characteristic of this fourth ray of harmony through conflict. This is by no means an easy subject to handle or to make clear. With the correctness of conflict, its naturally separative and eliminative effect, and its power to condition not only humanity, but also the hierarchy, will have to be considered. When we study the fourth initiation, that of the renunciation, the effects of its activity will emerge more clearly. Fundamentally, this fourth ray is that which is responsible for the strains and the stresses, and for the initial conflict between the major pair of opposites to which we give the name of spirit matter. It is this fourth ray energy which makes apparent the distinction, so often misunderstood by man, between good and evil. In Atlantean days, the leaders of men, under the influence of this paramount fourth ray energy, made a decision which laid the emphasis upon the matter aspect, according to their desire and their emotional reaction, which is present in the essential duality of manifestation, and thus inaugurated the age of materialism. This age has wrought itself out through its accompanying greed, hate, separativeness, and aggression. During the present century, this materialism led to the World War, which was in reality the expression of a shifting orientation, and therefore, to a certain extent, of a coming triumph of good. The balance is slowly, very slowly, swinging over to the side of the spirit aspect of the duality. It has not yet swung, even in intention, completely over, but the issues are becoming increasingly clear in men's minds, and the indications are that man will eventually decide correctly, will attain a point of balance or equilibrium, and will finally throw the weight of public opinion on the side of spiritual values, thus leading to a collective renunciation of materialism, particularly in its grosser and physical forms. The time is not yet, but a great awakening is in process. Men, however, will only see correctly when this principle of conflict is properly evaluated as a spiritual necessity and is used by humanity as an instrument to bring about emergence from the wrong controls and principles. Just as the individual disciple uses it to emerge out of the control of matter in the three worlds, beginning with the emergence from the control of the physical body, passing out of the control of the emotional nature, and formulating for himself a spiritual ideology which enables him to pass out of the control of the three worlds of forms, and so begin to function as a soul-infused personality, so mankind also has to do the same in mass formation. This whole process culminates when the fourth initiation, the Great Renunciation, is taken by man today, and by humanity in some distant future. This point of emergence is reached by right decision, and as a result of a right use of the principle of conflict. It will be obvious to you that this principle of conflict is closely related to death. By death, I mean extraction from form conditions, physical, emotional, or mental. I mean cessation of contact, temporarily or permanently, with physical form, with astral glamour, and with mental illusion. I mean the rejection of Maya, the name of that all-inclusive effect which overwhelms a man who is immersed in materialism of any kind, and is therefore overcome, from the soul angle, by life in the three worlds. It is the principle of conflict, latent in every atom of substance, which produces, first of all, conflict, then renunciation, and finally, emancipation, which produces war in some form or another, then rejection, and finally liberation. This principle is, as you can well see, closely linked to the law of karma. It is to this principle that Mrs. Besant refers when she speaks in one of her books of the fact that the substance whereof all forms are made is already, from the very dawn of the creative process, tinged with karma. There is deep occult significance to the thought, often voiced, that death is the great liberator. It means that the principle of conflict has succeeded in bringing about conditions wherein the spirit aspect is released, temporarily or permanently, from imprisonment in some kind of form life, either individual or group. You will all, as disciples or aspirants, be able to interpret the working of this principle as you watch the effect in your own lives of the action of the strains and stresses, the points of crisis or of tension which the conflict between soul and personality produces. Conflict is always present prior to renunciation, and it is only at this fourth great spiritual crisis that conflict, as well as we understand it, ends. In the realms of formless living wherein the hierarchy lives and moves and has its being, conflict, which has developed in man the sense of discriminative choice, is superseded by crises of decision, not decision based upon discriminative perception between right and wrong, or between spirituality and materialism, but crises of decision based upon perception of the plan, participation in the purpose, and the prevention of evil. I would have you ponder on these three phrases which distinguish the crisis of decision, which confront the master after the fourth initiation, and which take the place of the crisis of discrimination which precede that stage. And those are the perception of the plan, participation in the purpose, and prevention of evil. These decisions are based, first of all, on goodwill to all forms in the three worlds, and secondly, upon the will to good, which impulses and implements the three creative and manifesting aspects of divinity. These are deep things whereof we speak. It is wise to remember that all crises in the material world, individual crises and those related to humanity as a whole, are governed by the principle of conflict, whilst crises in the spiritual world are controlled by this esoteric principle, decision. The principle of conflict is the prime factor lying behind the evolution of form as the field of experience for the soul and the four kingdoms in nature, the human and the three subhuman. It is based on the intellectual factor of discrimination which is inherent in the smallest atom of substance, and which reaches its fullest expression in advanced humanity. The indications that it has achieved its purpose, as far as humanity is concerned, are to be found in the passing through the initiation of renunciation. The principle of decision, which controls the master, governs his work within the hierarchy in relation to Shambhala and in connection with all the service rendered in the three worlds. It is based on the energy of the second ray of love wisdom, just as the principle of conflict is based on the energy of the third ray of active intelligence. This principle of decision, as a controlling factor, is put to the test at the sixth initiation, the initiation of decision. At that time, the will aspect of divinity summarizes in a unique manner all past achievements of the two principles and brings in a final cycle of unfoldment to which I can give no truly appropriate name, but which climaxes in the ninth initiation of refusal. You have, therefore, in relation to these principles, which are all related to the law of karma, three great initiations, in which the effectiveness of the liberation brought about by their inherent action is finally tested. First, the initiation of renunciation, at the fourth initiation. The principle of conflict, governed by Ray 4, active in the human kingdom, the fourth leading to right discrimination. 2. The initiation of decision, the sixth initiation. The principle of decision, governed by Ray 3, active in the hierarchy, leading to right perception and participation. And 3. The initiation of refusal, the ninth initiation. The principle of liberated being, governed by all three major rays, active in Shambhala, leading to one or other of the seven paths. In the above tabulation, you have a wide and general picture of three major principles, leading to three great spiritual events, each of which is an expression of the personality, the soul, and the monad. Where humanity as a whole is involved, the effect is upon the reincarnating soul of the human kingdom, then on the liberated souls of the members of the hierarchy, and finally on the being which is distinctive of the council at Shambhala. A planned synthesis thus appears, producing immutability, inevitability, and correct prevision. It is also the result of the liberation of free will, and in no way infringes the right of the individual man or disciple to make free choice, once the principle of conflict has made him aware of the basic dualism of the manifested worlds. This presents him with a battleground and a field of experience wherein he makes great experimental choices and comes eventually to correct orientation and to the door of initiation, progressively revealed to him as the result of right choice, right perception, and right decision. Thus, the 9 initiations are covered. The principle of conflict has a close connection with the path of discipleship, and here lies the reason for the inclusive and synthetic aspect of the present world conflict. Though the physical aspects of the conflict are today greatly lessened, but are still present on a small scale in various parts of the world, the conflict is by no means over or yet resolved. It is still being violently waged by advanced human beings upon the mental plane and by the masses upon the plane of emotional reactions. It will be some time before the war truly is brought to a finish. There could, however, be no disaster more serious than a too abrupt ending of this clash of the emotional reactions of humanity and of the current ideologies. It is essential that the issues become still clear in the minds of men prior to any final choice or decision. This must be remembered, and students would do well to avoid discouragement and train themselves to wait with spiritual optimism for the way of humanity to clear. Too prompt a choice at this time might prove only a makeshift decision and one based on expediency and impatience. The hierarchy is in no way discouraged, though somewhat concerned the factor of timing may not prove correct. This principle of conflict is a familiar one to every struggling aspirant and conditions his whole life, producing crises and tensions, sometimes almost past endurance. They indicate nevertheless rapid development and steady progress. The activity of this principle is greatly increased at this time through the medium of the following spiritual events. First, the crises of the ideologies. Second, the awakening of humanity to better understanding. Third, the growth of goodwill, which leads to the presentation of certain fundamental cleavages, which must be bridged by human effort. Fourth, the partial sealing of the door where evil dwells. Fifth, the use of the great invocation with its extraordinary and rapid effects, at present unrealized by you. Sixth, the gradual approach of the hierarchy to a closer and more intimate relation to humanity. And seventh, the imminent return of the Christ. There are other factors, but these will be adequate to demonstrate to you the increased expression of conflict on all 3 levels of strictly human evolution. It is a conflict which has engulfed the masses in every land, which is still producing physical conflict, emotional strain, and tremendous mental issues, and which will greatly lessen when the masses of people everywhere are convinced that right human relations are of far greater importance than greed, human pride, territorial grabbing, and material possessions.